Because that October 23rd SoFi Stadium date was never just a Jay-Z concert. And the second people started treating it like a normal tour stop, they were already behind the story. Jay-Z is going from a 3-night New York run packed with Beyoncé, Nas, Alicia Keys, Eminem, Pharrell, Clipse, Rihanna, Usher, Fat Joe, Jadakiss, and more, straight into Los Angeles, in the same building where Kendrick Lamar and SZA just put up a reported 147,000 tickets and $40.4 million across 3 nights in May of 2025. And somehow I am supposed to believe those are 2 separate stories. No, that is not how this works. The venue matters. The timing matters. The names matter. And the part that should make everybody uncomfortable is that the question is not really whether Kendrick could pop out. The question is why this possibility already feels bigger than a guest appearance, and why the closer we get to that stage, the more it starts to look like a public power move aimed at the whole rap ecosystem, especially once we get to what Drake said on Iceman and what Pharrell has already been hinting at on stage. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now let me set the table the right way, because a lot of people are looking at this like it is fan fiction when really it is pattern recognition. What is confirmed is that SoFi Stadium announced Jay-Z's Los Angeles show for Friday, October 23rd, 2026, and framed it as part of a larger celebration of culture, legacy, and hits. That is real. That is not rumor. What is also real is that Jay-Z just spent his New York run reminding everybody that when he wants to turn a concert into an event, he does not think small. He thinks in scenes. He thinks in symbolism. He thinks in moments that create 10 days of conversation from 10 seconds of footage. Listen, I just have to say this. When a man spends 3 nights proving he can summon half the culture onto one stage, then books Los Angeles right after, you are not supposed to ignore the setup. You are supposed to ask what the setup is building toward. And Kendrick Lamar is at the center of that conversation whether his name is on the flyer or not. Why? Because SoFi is not a neutral building anymore in rap fan memory. Billboard reported that Kendrick and SZA's Grand National Tour stop there in May 2025 grossed $40.4 million from 147,000 tickets across 3 nights, and described it as part of the highest-grossing tour ever by a rapper. So now ask yourself something simple. If Jay-Z wants to create the biggest possible image in Los Angeles, why would he not touch the exact artist most closely linked to that stadium's recent rap mythology? Does everybody understand how loaded that is? Personally, it would be a major cosign. Culturally, it would trigger every post-beef argument all over again. Systemically, it would tell you which names the power structure is most comfortable standing next to when the cameras are on. That is why this is bigger than one pop-out. And I think we need to set the record straight on what is actually happening here, because the mainstream version of this story is still too shallow. People keep saying, wouldn't it be cool if Kendrick showed up? Cool is not the word. Important is the word. Strategic is the word. Because Jay-Z does not choose stages like a random artist trying to get a fun surprise off. He chooses stages like a man who understands legacy, optics, and timing. If he wanted a simple LA show, there are plenty of places he could do a simple LA show. But SoFi after New York? SoFi after Kendrick just ran up that building with SZA? SoFi after Drake spent part of Iceman taking shots at Jay-Z? That is not simple. That is layered. And by the time we get to the business and image side of why these alignments matter, you're going to see that the guest question is actually the smallest piece of the whole puzzle. Start with the surface evidence, because the surface evidence is already screaming. Rolling Stone laid out the insanity of Jay-Z's New York guest list, and it read less like a concert recap and more like the credits at the end of a rap empire documentary. Beyoncé, Blue Ivy, Nas, Memphis Bleak, Alicia Keys, Eminem, Slick Rick, Pharrell, Clipse, Rihanna, Usher, Jeezy, Fat Joe, Jadakiss, Teyana Taylor, The Dream, Swizz Beatz, Jermaine Dupri. That is not a casual run of cameos. That is a controlled demonstration of influence. That is the kind of lineup you build when you want to remind the entire industry that your phone still works. So when people act like Los Angeles is going to be the one stop where he suddenly says, you know what, I think I'll just keep this one low key, I have to laugh. Since when has that ever been the pattern? Since when does a man go maximalist 3 nights in a row and then turn minimalist at the exact stop where symbolism matters even more? And the venue choice only sharpens that point. One thing rap fans understand instinctively, even if they do not always say it out loud, is that buildings carry memory. Madison Square Garden carries memory. The Forum carries memory. Yankee Stadium carries memory. And right now, SoFi carries Kendrick memory. That does not mean Jay-Z is borrowing it. That does not mean he needs it. But it does mean that if he invites Kendrick into that picture, the footage is going to hit with an emotional weight it would not have in some random arena. Because then it is not just Jay-Z and Kendrick on a stage. It is Jay-Z stepping into the house Kendrick just turned into a rap landmark and saying, in effect, yes, this is the guy the room moves for right now. One person keeps creating moments that become headlines without begging for them. The other, the subliminal snowman, keeps trying to reverse engineer reality out of bars and likes. That is not the same level of control. Then there is the obvious visual argument that nobody should be pretending is small. Kendrick is already tied to giant public stages in this era. Billboard's coverage of the Grand National Tour also reminded people of the scale of his recent public run, and Roc Nation's own announcement made clear Kendrick was the halftime performer for Super Bowl 59 with Roc Nation involved in the production. So when people talk about a Jay-Z and Kendrick moment as if it would come out of nowhere, no, it would come out of the exact trajectory Kendrick has been on. Big stage, big moment, big symbolism, big reaction. That is his lane right now. He is not hiding in a side room dropping cryptic SoundCloud lussies. He is doing every job to 100% on the largest stages available. So if Jay-Z is designing a Los Angeles statement piece, Kendrick fits the grammar of that statement better than almost anyone alive. Now I know some of the Mr. Second Opinion fan club are going to hear that and start shaking in the comments, but let's keep going. Because the next piece of visible evidence is not just that Jay-Z has the capacity to bring out anyone. It is that his current run is already being framed as legacy theater, not regular promotion. The SoFi announcement itself described the new shows in Paris and Los Angeles as expanding a historic celebration of culture, legacy, and hits. That wording matters. Historic celebration, legacy, culture. Those are not small words. Those are institution words. Those are the kinds of words that invite generational optics. And what is the cleanest generational optic available in that building? It is not random nostalgia. It is not just another veteran guest. It is the elder architect sharing a massive LA frame with the disciplined modern standard bearer who just turned that same building into his own recent proving ground. Can we have the real conversation now? And before somebody says, well, maybe Jay-Z just likes the venue. Sure. Maybe. He also likes scenes. He also likes messaging. He also likes moments that let the culture do the talking for him. We do not need to invent a conspiracy when the plain reading is already loud enough. Artists at this level communicate through staging, through sequencing, through what city gets which guests, through which friends are suddenly standing 3 feet from one another with 50,000 phones in the air. Think about what is being shown to you versus what is being told to you. New York got the homecoming constellation. Los Angeles is almost certainly going to get a city-specific answer. And if that answer does not include Kendrick, people will still spend weeks explaining why it did not. That alone tells you how central he is to the possibility. And speaking of which, it seems like one of those dices actually landed in a strange way, because Drake may have helped create the exact context he does not want. Hot 97 reported that on Iceman, Drake took multiple shots at Jay-Z, including the jig is up, the famous, I'll take 500K, not the dinner, kind of framing, and another line about people running to HOV for a second opinion. So let me ask you a very basic question. If Jay-Z was truly irrelevant to Drake's current thinking, why is he in the bars? Why is the elder statesman still in the crosshairs? Why does Mr. Second Opinion have so much to say about a man he supposedly does not care about? Because he knows what everybody else knows. Jay-Z's presence still means something. Jay-Z's approval still means something. Jay-Z standing next to Kendrick in Los Angeles would mean a lot. And whether Drake likes that or not, he already admitted the stakes by mentioning him at all. And oh, do I have more for you? Because the SoFi date and the Iceman shots are just the clean public layer. The part the stands are really not going to like is what happens when you add Pharrell, Clipse, and the reported industry discomfort around Kendrick entering that orbit too. That is where this stops being a fun concert theory and starts looking like a coalition picture. And once it becomes a coalition picture, the panic gets louder, the media spin room gets busier, and the narrative janitors start mopping up for free. So stand with me on this, because the next layer is where the story stops being about one guest and starts being about which side of the room keeps ending up with the power, the momentum, and the better optics. Vibe reported on Clipse and Pharrell previewing Kendrick Lamar's verse on Chains and Whips, and the most interesting thing there was not just the existence of the song. It was the reported concern around the optics of Kendrick linking with 2 of Drake's most visible opponents amid the broader legal and media tension hanging over the rap landscape. Read that again in plain English. The optics alone were enough to make people nervous. Not a confirmed nuclear diss. Not some wild public scandal. The optics. That is huge. Because it tells you that in this climate, alignment is content. Proximity is content. Association is content. The room already understands that when certain names appear together, the meaning extends beyond music. And if Kendrick standing next to Clipse and Pharrell raises that kind of temperature, what do you think Kendrick standing next to Jay-Z at SoFi would do? Now layer Pharrell into it more directly. Hot 97 reported that during the Yankee Stadium run, Pharrell told the crowd Jay-Z was ready to go to war. Using that hole, they poked the bear, and now the bear cut his hair, language that instantly set rap internet on fire. Whether you take that as playful hype or as symbolic messaging, the important part is that it entered the public bloodstream. People heard it. People clipped it. People interpreted it. And this is why I keep saying the October show cannot be read in isolation. Once a figure like Pharrell frames Jay-Z that way in public, every later move gets read through that lens. Every guest gets reinterpreted. Every handshake starts looking like part of a bigger answer. And the funniest part is the subliminal snowman cannot do anything about that except post more bars and hope the narrative janitors can spin it into something softer. There is also the Clipse factor, and that part matters culturally because Clipse are not random supporting characters in this era of the conversation. They are attached to Pharrell. They are attached to elite rap credibility. They are attached to old and new rap tensions at the same time. So when Vibe reports that label people were reportedly concerned about the optics of Kendrick and Clipse linking, that tells you the industry already sees these alignments as meaningful. The culture is not imagining that weight. The weight is real. And if that is true for a song, then it is definitely true for a stadium appearance. Listen, I am not saying a Jay-Z and Kendrick pop-out automatically becomes a declaration of war. I am saying the environment has been primed so heavily that many people would read it that way anyway. That is the difference. The interpretation is built in before the curtain even rises. At the same time, I want to be honest enough to keep this credible. Kendrick is not the only possible special guest that makes sense for Los Angeles. Dr. Dre makes sense. Snoop Dogg makes sense. West Coast royalty makes sense. Even Clipse and Pharrell make sense given what just happened in New York. So I am not here telling you Kendrick is the only mathematical option. What I am telling you is he is the most charged option. He is the option that best fuses venue memory, recent stadium dominance, post-beef symbolism, and Jay-Z's appetite for meaningful optics. Other guests would get cheers. Kendrick would get think pieces. Other guests would make the night fun. Kendrick would make the night historic. And if you are a man curating legacy events in 2026, which one do you think you reach for if the relationships allow it? And I know some people are going to say, you are reading too much into one possible appearance. No, what I am doing is reading hip-hop the way hip-hop has always been read. Through alliances. Through cosigns. Through who appears where and when. Through who gets the invite. Through who gets the hometown halo. Through who looks most comfortable in the winner's frame. Does everybody understand how crazy this actually is? If Kendrick walks into that image, you're going to have one side of the culture seeing it as a generational salute, another side seeing it as anti-Drake theater, another side seeing it as pure business, and all three groups will probably be right at the same time. That is what makes the moment so dangerous and so magnetic. It means too many things at once to be dismissed as just another concert surprise. And if you have made it to this point in the video, you are amazing, because now we need to do the hard pivot that most channels are too scared or too lazy to make. The concert conversation is fun. The guest list conversation is easy. The beef spillover conversation is clickable. Fine. But none of that explains why one possible appearance can instantly feel like a referendum on the whole rap hierarchy. For that, we have to move from music into structure. From who is popping out to who controls the winner's frame. From entertainment to infrastructure. Because what you are really watching here is not just a concert rollout. You are watching the battle over who gets to represent legitimacy in rap at the stadium level. Here is the business truth a lot of fans do not like to hear. Modern rap power is not just about who had the better verse or the better diss. It is about who gets wrapped in the right institutional signals. Venue scale is a signal. Tour grosses are a signal. Super Bowl positioning is a signal. Which artists' powerful figures are willing to stand beside in public is a signal. Media framing is a signal. Once you understand that, the SoFi question gets bigger immediately. If Jay-Z and Kendrick share that stage, the message is not just these two artists are cool. The message becomes this is a safe and profitable alignment for the biggest rooms in the business. And that is exactly the sort of thing that can make competitors and fan bases panic, because it suggests that the market, the institutions, and the high-status public stages are leaning in one direction. This is why I said earlier that Drake may have helped create his own problem. By taking public shots at Jay-Z on Iceman, he dragged an elder institutional figure back into active fan interpretation. He reminded people that Jay-Z still sits in the symbolic architecture of rap power. And once you do that, you cannot be shocked when every Jay-Z move gets read back through your conflict with Kendrick. That is basic cause and effect. The The subliminal snowman wanted the bars to sound defiant. Cool. But defiance has consequences. You mention the architect, people start watching the building. You mention second opinions, people start tracking who still seeks whose presence. You say the jig is up, people start looking for the next public countermove. That is how narrative ecosystems work. Once you activate one node, the whole network lights up. And let's talk about the winner's frame, because this is where the whole industry piece comes together. The winner's frame is not just who had a good year. It is who looks most effortless in the biggest moments. It is who does not appear to be chasing validation because validation keeps arriving uninvited. Kendrick's recent run fits that profile almost perfectly. Grand national tour numbers at SoFi, major public stage presence, ongoing cultural centrality, and now a plausible path into Jay-Z's biggest Los Angeles legacy event. That is what institutional ease looks like. Compare that to the other side. Mr. Second Opinion is still trying to litigate his standing through jabs, likes, and narrative cleanup from the spin room. One person keeps walking into bigger and bigger rooms. The other keeps trying to convince us the rooms do not matter after spending years proving they matter more than anything. What I want everybody to understand is that this is why Vibe's reporting about label concern over optics is not some side detail. It is the whole story in miniature. Labels worry about optics because optics affect commerce, reputation, partnerships, and future leverage. An alignment does not need to contain a direct diss to produce market meaning. It just needs to create a picture that audiences, media, and industry players all interpret in roughly the same direction. And Jay-Z with Kendrick at SoFi would be one of the most efficient pictures imaginable. It would say, without saying, that the disciplined guy who already owns recent stadium mythology in that building is also the guy powerful elders are comfortable elevating in front of the whole world. That is devastating not because it proves a private conspiracy, but because it creates a public common sense. And here is the emotional reset we need, because this stuff can get very serious very fast. Imagine being the narrative janitors in that scenario. Imagine clocking in for your shift the morning after the show, seeing that footage everywhere, and trying to explain to the internet that, actually this means nothing. Brother, good luck. You would need a mop, a bucket, 3 burner accounts, and a gallon of denial. Because once the image exists, the image does the work. That is the beauty and the brutality of this level of entertainment politics. Nobody needs a press release. Nobody needs an op-ed. Nobody needs a diss. The frame itself becomes the statement. That is why the biggest artists obsess over the frame. And that is why the fans who pretend frames do not matter are always the ones most emotionally destroyed by them. Now we get to the truth bomb, and I need you to stay with me on this because this is the whole video. The real reveal is not that Kendrick Lamar is definitely coming out at SoFi. We do not know that. The real reveal is that the culture already believes the image makes sense. That is the devastating part. That is the part people keep missing. A theory only gets this much traction when it already feels emotionally true based on the public evidence. Jay-Z's New York run already established the mega guest pattern. SoFi already carries Kendrick's recent rap mythology because of the reported 147,000 tickets and $40.4 million with SZA. Drake already reactivated Jay-Z as a symbol by throwing bars at him on Iceman. Pharrell already framed Jay-Z as ready for war. Vibe already reported that Kendrick-adjacent alliances were sensitive enough to create label concern over optics. So by the time the idea of a Kendrick pop-out hits the timeline, the public mind is ready to receive it as plausible destiny, not random fantasy. And that matters more than people think, because in rap, plausibility is power. If the culture can already imagine you in the winner's frame, you are halfway there before the event even happens. If the culture can already picture the elder architect saluting you in your own symbolic building, then your position has already hardened in the public imagination. That is why this is such a catastrophic development for the people still trying to downplay Kendrick's stature. They are not just arguing against a rumor. They are arguing against a narrative that fits too many confirmed facts too neatly. And when a narrative fits like that, it becomes sticky. It becomes durable. It becomes the kind of story that, if one single piece of confirming footage appears, explodes into accepted truth within minutes. Take this with a grain of salt, but I think that is why the idea unsettles so many people more than the moment itself probably would. The moment would be one appearance. The meaning would be enormous. The meaning would be that the biggest rooms, the biggest stages, and the biggest legacy figures are all comfortable placing Kendrick inside the most prestigious frames of this era. And if that happens in Los Angeles, at SoFi, after the year Kendrick has had, and after the bars Drake chose to throw, then the consequences are not just fan arguments. The consequences are reputational. The consequences are symbolic. The consequences touch how future moments get interpreted before they even happen. This is how hierarchies get manufactured in real time. Not just with music, with scenes, with optics, with repeated public associations that train the audience how to read the board. So where does that leave the hero, and where does that leave the villain? It leaves Kendrick exactly where disciplined artists always end up when they keep doing every job to 100%. Rising without forcing it. Winning without begging for applause. Still central even when he is not saying much. Still looming over the conversation because the work has already spoken loudly enough. That, to me, is the biggest takeaway. Kendrick does not need Jay-Z to validate him. The SoFi numbers already validated him. The scale already validated him. The fact that this potential image feels so believable already validated him. But if Jay-Z does bring him out, then it will not feel like charity. It will feel like recognition catching up to reality. It will feel like the room acknowledging what the room already knows. Meanwhile, the subliminal snowman is stuck in a very different energy. He can rap. Sure. He can post. Sure. He can throw jabs. Sure. But what he cannot do is stop the culture from reading these giant public images as bigger than whatever he can scribble into the next cold little bar. And that is the problem with trying to manage perception after the fact. You end up reacting to scenes other people built. You end up explaining why a frame does not matter right after you spent your own records proving that frames, alliances, and status absolutely matter. One person is out here building an aura of institutional ease. The other is trying to do algebra on a snow day. It is not impossible, but it does look embarrassing. And I said this in previous videos in a general way, and now we are right back here again. The artist who looks most comfortable in the biggest rooms usually wins the long game. Not always the loudest artist. Not always the most online artist. Not always the artist with the most angles or the most narrative janitors. The one who looks like he belongs in the center of history when history is being filmed. Right now, that is Kendrick. And Jay-Z knows exactly what that looks like because he has been that figure before. Which is another reason this whole thing is so compelling. If there is one elder statesman who understands the symbolic value of placing a younger superstar into a legacy frame, it is him. That is why the rumor survives. That is why the possibility breathes. That is why people keep circling back to it. This is only the start, and that is the part one really need everybody to lock into before October gets here. Whether Kendrick pops out or not, the mere fact that this conversation exists at this level tells you the hierarchy battle is not cooling down. It is getting more symbolic, more cinematic, more stage-driven, more about optics than ever. So keep your eyes on every Jay-Z appearance between now and SoFi. Keep your eyes on Pharrell. Keep your eyes on Clipse. Keep your eyes on how the media spin room suddenly starts trying to pre-explain things before they happen, because that usually tells you they are scared of the frame already. And if you want the next breakdown, the one where we really get into how Drake may have accidentally put Jay-Z back into active play with those Iceman bars, and why that could have consequences far beyond one concert, you are absolutely not going to want to miss that one.